Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Scott Selections here with StatSalt.com. Just a quick recap from yesterday, April 1st. We ended up doubling down on the Red Sox game versus the Oakland A's. As our Twitter play today was Red Sox first five over 2.5. And the full game was our play of the day, which was over 4.5 for a total. Both those losses, the Red Sox got shut out. A's started a pitcher with an 8+ ERA, and yet somehow he ended up throwing 6 scoreless. I don't really know what happened, but then again, it is baseball. It kind of reminded me of last season when the Red Sox had statistically, they had the best offense in the entire league, and then they somehow got no hit by Sean Manaea very quickly. I don't really know what happened there, but, it happens, I guess. We still like the read on it. We think it made a lot of sense, but the Red Sox just couldn't generate anything. And then Xander Bogaerts gets thrown out at the plate in the second inning by an absolute BB of a throw by the center fielder there. Nothing that could really happen. Figures itself out. How's it going, Terry? How's it going, Thomas, Big X, B-Phils, and Jimmy? And I see all of you. But we are still up, even though we're currently in the middle of a 4-game losing streak on our selections. We're still 13-8-1 for plus 3.7 units, so we're still in pretty good shape. But right now, we just got to focus on trying to end this losing streak, and then everything will hopefully pick itself back up in the not-so-distant future. But before I go into the play of the day for this one, we will be looking at the leans for college basketball, which resumes today in some of the minor tournaments in the NIT and the CIT. And the first game we're going to be talking about is the Lipscomb-Wichita State game. I thought about making this a play of the day, but I decided against it because of the way that Wichita State has played in recent games and the way that their defense has dominated and the fact that they have a superior coaching advantage. I still like Lipscomb winning this game. The game will be in a neutral in Madison Square Garden, but I said before the tournament, as I said a couple of days ago, right before Lipscomb beat NC State, Lipscomb was my pick to win the NIT before the tournament even started. And Lipscomb has, in my opinion, one of the best offenses in the country. Wichita State is a great defense, and I know defenses typically win out again in the defense versus offensive battle. I just don't think Wichita State's going to score enough points. Wichita State only has 2 players averaging double-digit points, and Lipscomb with Matthews, who scored 45, 44 points against NC State. I just think they're just up-tempo. I think they're going to get Wichita State out of their game, and I think that Lipscomb will be able to get the win in that one. Moving on, you have Marshall versus Hampton. Lots of money coming in on Marshall. I lean to Marshall minus 6.5, and I'll also lean to the over in this game at 173.5. Total's really high, but it should be between these teams. Overall, though, main lean would be on Marshall minus 6.5, led by Elmore and the group that ended up winning a NCAA tournament game. They had a very disappointing season, but they are still 14-3 at home, where Hampton is 6-11 on the road. I would lean to Marshall in that one. Moving on, you have Texas Southern and Green Bay. Total was at 177. Now it's at 175.5. Green Bay minus 6. I would actually lean towards Texas Southern plus the points. As I said before, Texas Southern, this team has made the tournament each of the last 2 seasons before this year. And Green Bay, although Cohen's a great player, they play no defense. Texas Southern does have the ability to switch to an up-tempo trap. And I think Green Bay will have some issues dealing with that offensively. I would lean towards Texas Southern plus the points in that game. Moving on, you have the Texas Longhorns versus the TCU Horned Frogs. Lean towards TCU. Actually, that game's such a toss-up because it spreads out 1.5. A lot of money's coming in on TCU. I'm actually going to lean to Texas in that one. TCU ended up beating Texas in the end of the regular season by a decent amount of points in Texas. I think it's a revenge spot for the Longhorns. Plus, you have Roach back for Texas. I think that his presence does a lot for the team defensively. I'd lean to the under 138, and I would lean towards Texas plus 1.5. Now, moving on, we'll be looking at the MLB card, where I will give my brief previews of all the games, and then I'll go into my play of the day. First game, you have Detroit versus the Yankees, I should say. Lean to the Yankees in this one. I know it's at minus 225, but Tanaka definitely a better pitcher than Zimmerman. Zimmerman had a no-hitter through about 7 innings against the Blue Jays. But we all know that last year he was awful. And Tanaka, especially with the wind blowing in, he's a solid pitcher because he tries to limit the amount of home runs to become a ground ball pitcher. The Tigers lineup isn't great by any means, I know the Yankees currently are dealing with a lot of injuries to Stanton and to Andujar and to Hicks and to Gregorius and a lot of other players, but the team is still better than the Tigers, and I would lean towards the Yankees in that one. Moving on, you have the Brewers versus the Reds with Chacin versus DeSclafani. It's DeSclafani's first start of the season, but he has had some success in the majors in previous years. Or Chacin was the ace of the staff last season for the Brewers, but he ended up getting rocked by the Cardinals in the first game of the season, even though the Brewers were able to rally for a win in that one. I would lean towards the Brewers minus 120 because I think the Brewers have the pitching advantage, the bullpen advantage, and they have Yelich in the lineup, and he's arguably at this point one of the best players in baseball, if not top 3. So lean to the Brewers in that one. Moving on, you have the Phillies versus the Nationals. Lean to the Phillies, actually, in this one. I know it's Scherzer, and the main talking point is going to be Harper in his first game back to D.C. after leaving. Scherzer's currently at a minus 185, while Eflin is going for the Phillies at plus 165. Eflin has struggled in previous years, but he was fantastic last season. And even though the Nationals have the superior starting pitching in this matchup, their bullpen is terrible. I think in terms of offensive lineups, I actually prefer Phillies with Harper and Hoskins and Real Muto. I think that they have a lot of key pieces in the core, and I think that their offense is better. And Washington's bullpen got exposed by the Mets in the first series of the season, and I actually trust Philadelphia's bullpen a lot more than I do Washington's. In terms of the game, I would not touch the first 5 innings. However, if you wanted to find some potential value, I'd look into Philly's second half money line. Some books offer it, some books don't. But if you can somehow find a way to bet on Philadelphia when Scherzer is not in the game, I think that a live total over or Philadelphia spread live does make a lot of sense because Washington's bullpen is definitely one of the weaker ones in all of baseball. Moving on, you have Baltimore versus Toronto. Toronto currently laying 192 with Stroman, while the Orioles have Cashner on the mound at plus 167. Yesterday, we were right about the Orioles. We thought there was too much value on the Orioles based on Toronto's price they were laying. I still see value on Toronto here. I know Toronto's 3-1. I mean, I know that Baltimore is 3-1 and Toronto is 2-3. There's no way Toronto should be laying over 190. I mean, both teams are awful. Baltimore is significantly worse. Baltimore's actually on a pretty solid run in the first 4 games of the season. So I would actually lean towards Baltimore plus the 167 according to covers.com. And even if you're a little bit more hesitant on that, I look into Baltimore plus 1.5 runs in that game at a small minus, but there's no way Toronto should be favored by this much, especially since both the lineups will have a hard time throughout the entirety of the season to generate runs. Moving on, you have the Rays versus the Rockies in a pitching duel between Snell and Freeland. Freeland was tremendous last season, and he was also really good in the team's first game against the Marlins. While Snell won the AL Cy Young Award, got a huge contract extension, but he was awful against the Astros in the first game of the season. I'm going to call that a fluke. I think that Snell is definitely a tremendous pitcher. Freeland's definitely tremendous. I expect both of them to be dealing. The total in this game is at 7. I think it's deserved. However, I'm not really sold on the Rockies' bullpen. Tampa is a 175 favorite. They have been great at home. They are 4-1, especially with Colorado missing Daniel Murphy, who's on the DL with a broken finger. I actually would lean to the under 7 in this game and the first half under in this game. And even if you want to go proppy, I wouldn't throw out the idea of no score first inning. I expect this game to be very low scoring throughout. I see this game being somewhere in the realm of 1-1 after 5 innings. Bullpens might blow it up, but in terms of the starters, I expect both of them to be dealing early and often in this game. Moving on, the Mets and the Marlins, you have Vargas versus Urena. Mets won yesterday. Vargas, awful last season, but he did pick it up a little bit after he went on the DL for a brief stint in the middle of the season. And Urena has actually been pretty solid in recent seasons for a Miami team that has pretty much no run support whatsoever. Urena he was pretty solid in his, at home last season, and he has been good in his last 2 starts against the Mets in particular. In terms of who I like in this game, I would lean towards the Marlins plus 120, just because I don't trust Vargas laying a 140 line. But the Mets are definitely the superior team. They're 3-1 for a reason. They've looked pretty good so far, and they're 4-0 on the run line on the road this season. The Mets, I'd lean towards the Marlins in the first 5, but the Marlins bullpen will get blown up like it did yesterday against the Mets. I would lean towards the over in the full game, and I would lean towards the Marlins in the first 5 innings money line. Moving on, you have the Astros versus the Rangers. The Astros won another game yesterday, but they still can't score any runs. And Shelby Miller, we all know that disastrous trade, how that worked out, where he was shipped off from Atlanta for a ton of prospects, and then he materialized into nothing with Arizona. They ended up getting rid of him, and now he's on Texas. Nobody knows what his status is. I'm assuming it's not too good, but the Astros currently can't score any runs, and Verlander's on the mound. I know it's in Texas. I'd have to lean towards the under. In terms of spreads, I'd lean to the Astros -1.5, but I'm a little bit cautious because they can't score any runs. I would lean to the under 9 here because Shelby Miller, even though if he gives up 4 runs or so, I think that's fine. I don't think Texas is going to score more than 2 or 3 runs in this game entirely because Verlander is absolutely fantastic. He got the whole contract extension. He's definitely a great pitcher. Borderline Hall of Famer. I think he will be Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. But I would lean to the under 9 in that game. How's it going, Don? Nice to see you again. Moving on, you have the Twins versus the Kansas City Royals. We're going to skip that because that's going to be our play of the day. Moving on, you have Boston versus Oakland. Yeah, Boston, yeah. Words cannot describe how much you let me and the viewers down yesterday. But that's a 1-game sample size based on that. The team's 1-4. They can't score runs. It's only fitting that the 1 game we bet on the Red Sox was the only game this season they've gone under the posted total. For this game, you have Sale versus Fires. I have to lean to the over 7.5 in this game. In terms of the value, I see value on Oakland money line, especially with the way Sale looked against the Mariners in the first game of the season. His fastball looked slow. His pitches weren't moving as much as they usually were. I know that he had some arm issues last season towards the end, and I don't know what his current status is, but clearly he didn't look 100%. And Fires, he got rocked in his first start against the Mariners, but he is still a very solid pitcher. He's the ace of the staff. Plus 160 at home is a pretty solid deal for Oakland if you want. If you want to take a little bit less of a gamble, plus 1.5 runs makes sense, but I'd lean to the over 7.5. I think after the Red Sox got shut out yesterday, I think they will be scoring some runs. Plus, I don't trust Sale or the Red Sox bullpen by any means. I can see this game being 5-3, 6-3, something along those lines. I'd lean to the over 7.5 in that game. Moving on, you have the Diamondbacks versus the Padres. We were right on the Diamondbacks yesterday, as we thought that the Padres were overvalued after beating the Giants, and the Giants are one of the worst teams in baseball. In this game, you have Greinke versus Lauer. Lauer looked good in his first start. Greinke did not, but Greinke's numbers in Petco Park are absolutely fantastic, and I would lean to the Diamondbacks with this underdog roll, roughly plus 100, and I would also lean to the under 7.5 in this game. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. Lauer has been solid so far. Padres decided to do a youth movement with the starting pitching. They decided to throw out all the old people, bring in all the young prospects, and even though they're 3-2, they have actually looked really good, with the exception of yesterday when their starter got shelled early. But 4 of the 5 have looked really good, and I think that Lauer definitely is an underrated pitcher at this point in time, where Greinke might be a little bit undervalued because of the way that he had to pitch against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers offense has looked great early on, despite their 3-2 record. I'd lean to the under 7.5 and the Diamondbacks winning that game outright. Moving on, you have the Giants versus the Dodgers, Bumgarner versus Ryu. I have to lean to the Dodgers anyway. I love Bumgarner as a pitcher. I feel bad for him after winning that second World Series ring pretty much all by himself. The Giants have done nothing to actually, get him an opportunity to make another serious playoff run. They did lose to the Cubs that 1 year. But overall, this team stinks. I know they won yesterday. I know they beat the Dodgers yesterday, but Ryu versus Bumgarner. Ryu's also really good. I'd lean to the first 5 under between these two because I think Bumgarner and Ryu will pitch well. But the Dodgers have abilities to hit home runs 1 through 9, or 1 through 8, I should say. And I find that a little bit concerning, but I lean to the Dodgers in that game because the Giants bullpen is a dumpster fire and a half. Moving on, you have the Angels in Seattle with Trevor Cahill versus Marco Gonzalez. I have to lean to the Mariners. I mean, the Mariners are 6-1, and the Angels are 1-4. Mariners are low-key cooking, and they usually do well in the early months of the season before they collapse around the All-Star break, which is exactly what happened last season. Gonzalez pitches for a lot of contact, but he's very great control, and I think that the Mariners will continue their hot streak. If Felix Hernandez is able to shut down this Angels offense, for only about a 1 earned run. I have to assume Gonzalez is going to pitch well here. Kale is solid, but he's a lot better at home than he is on the road. I'd lean to the over in this game, but I would lean to the Mariners to get the job done at roughly -125. And now for your play of the day, we're going to be going back to the Twins and the Royals matchup. And we, like the pitchers in this game, as we will be going with the first 5 innings under 4, which is currently available at -105 at Bet Online. The game is in Kansas City. Both teams are 2-1 on the season. And the pitching matchup is Berrios versus Brad Keller. Both pitchers gave up no runs in their first start, and we think that both pitchers will keep it going in this one, as we like the under 4 in the first 5 innings at -105. Both pitchers against the opposing team, so Berrios against Kansas City, as well as Keller against the Twins in their career so far, have opposing on-base percentages of .90 or less against the other team. In other words, both pitchers, the lineups, the people that come to the plate from both teams just can't get on base against these two pitchers. And the Twins offense had that one game where they scored 9 runs against Cleveland, but overall haven't really done much offensively. Where the Royals, their offense has been okay, but that was against the White Sox pitching staff. And if you look at the Royals lineup, first of all, they're not good against Berrios. Second of all, you got Merrifield, Mondesi, Gordon Soler, O'Hearn, Owings, Dozier, Maldonado, and Billy Hamilton. That lineup stinks. That's a bottom 5 lineup in all of baseball. The Twins have a good lineup, but they have not generated any runs. The wind is also blowing in by about 3 miles per hour. But in that game, I know that we've lost 4 straight in terms of play of the day, but I still like where we've been trying to pinpoint the board. I just think the games haven't gone our way, but I do think that we have found some good spots on the board. I think I'm seeing the board well, and I definitely think that at -105, the under 4 in the first 5 innings is definitely worth a look, as both teams are going to be using their ace pitchers, quote unquote. Both the lineups haven't been great this season, and I think that the Twins and the Royals will be a low-scoring game. Berrios, I think, has the potential to be a serious ace on this team. Berrios has looked great in recent spots. He was great last season for the bulk of the season before falling apart a little bit down the stretch. But he was fantastic in his first start against the Indians, and I'd have to lean to the under 4 in the first 5 innings at -105 at Bet Online. As for your baseball play of the day, on Twitter, stay tuned. I wasn't the biggest fan of the baseball card, but if I see something in terms of team totals, I will definitely look into it. But your pick of the day, as I said before, and I will be saying for the last time, will be on the Twins and Royals under 4 in the first 5 innings at -105. Now, just a recap for our record. So far, we are 13-1 for plus 3.7 units. We were a lot better last week when we were 13-4-1, but I feel like we've just had a little bit of a bad stretch. We should pick it up, and we believe that this selection will do that. But that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections here on April 2nd. And good luck to all of you and all the betting action you have on this Tuesday. Have a good day, everybody.